Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Today, I wanted to do a bit of a video because my live talk with Superman 2025 got a lot of positive feedback. I got a lot of engagement on it. So, this is going to be a pre recorded video, and this is going to be my ranking of all now 10 live action Superman products, movies, whatever. And if you like this, I will also do a ranking of Superman shows, and then I could do a tier list of the best Superman portrayals or Clark Kent, so Lex Luthor and all that, like the best live action Superman character, portrayals. Like we could throw different Lexes in there and stuff like that. So let me know what you think about it. But this is going to be ranking all of the Supermans, including the new ones. So let's just jump into it right away. And my number 10, because I am going from the worst to the overall best. And for me, my number 10 is going to be, of course, the Justice League Superman, or the Justice League, as it has become known. Look, what can I say about this? This right here was a terrible example of WB having their hands in this project. And look, here's the thing: this was so poorly mismanaged. They called this the Justice League because Josh Wheaton came in and just shot and reshot a ton of stuff in this movie. This was so incoherent. All of the characters that are in here get cut or have no parts. This is one of those baffling decisions that I thought was just really head scratching on why they went with the way that they went through with this. It was tonally all over the place. There was a ton of decisions that I didn't understand. There was a shockingly bad uh, version of Superman in the beginning that looked like they CGI'd over Henry Cavill because he famously had the mustache going on for Mission Impossible. This was just a incoherent mess of a movie. And that's why when I get the pushback of, oh, people like the Snyder Cut, blah blah blah. I'm not in that camp, and I think people forget how not widely received. Now, there's been on record about the interference of the studio and just the really blocking Zack Snyder's overall vision or whatever. There was a lot of interference in this, and I think that made it an incoherent mess. So, definitely at my very bottom would be the Josh Wheaton cut of the Justice League, which was originally Zack Snyder's. And to his credit, he did not want to make the movie like this. It was just the way it came out. So it's one of those ones where I was like, you know, I wish we could have seen the original version, and we'll get to that. Um, the 4 hour Snyder cut, but the Justice League is definitely the worst in my mind. I disliked it. So, um, moving right along to the next one that we have. So, at number 9, and this is going to take you folks back. The number 9 for me is going to be Superman for the Quest for Peace. Oh boy. This Superman, besides being a product of its time, okay, this Superman was made in 1987, and this was famously plagued with a lot of issues. I do like this villain right here, and I like some of the ideas, even though he's kind of goofy. This was supposed to be a commentary on nuclear war. Gene Hackman is just kind of wasted in this film. Um, this was so like, it was so bad. And behind the scenes, there was a lot of reporting, a lot of issues that came up in this production. It was very troubled. Once again, Warner Bros. With studio interference, and that's what you're going to get a lot on this list. Now, it's really hard for me to say, do I think this is like the worst thing ever? I mean, it's a lot of it's a product of its time, like it's this goofy ass volcano thing. But some of it is just that studio interference. I don't know if it's gotten worse or not. I can't say. What I can say is, after Richard Donner had left, and it had lost something, especially around the next one I'll talk about. But this was one that was bafflingly confusing to me. Uh, and I don't I heard Christopher Reeves too. He had talked about this later before he had passed about what the general idea of the movie was supposed to be. And I just think it got lost in translation. And bless uh, Christopher Reeves, willingness to still do this movie, because the script is just god awful. The story is god awful. And it's kind of funny that I put Justice League underneath this, but to me, I can watch Superman 4 if I'm doing a marathon. I can do the classics, but it's like on a list of like one of the last ones I want to watch along with the Justice League, or I just skip that one entirely. So for me, it was super hard to like say that it's worse than the Justice League, but I still take it over that. So yeah, my number 9 is going to be the god awful Superman Quest for Peace. I just think the concept is really weird too. The plot of the movie is that Nuclear Man is created by Lex Luthor, and they're trying to do this social commentary on budget constraints. It was co-wrote by Christopher Reeve, which is really sad. Um, it's one of those really weird cases of like, what are we doing? What are we doing? So that's my number 9 for us. It's definitely a shame, a real shame. So uh, I don't know what they were thinking. And I'm going to get a lot on this, especially on the next one. But my number 8, once again, I don't know how many of these are going to be hot takes. And in the comments below, let me know your list. But my number 8 on this list is going to be Superman 3. Holy fucking shit. Now, like, look, I grew up with the comedians like Richard Pryor or whatever. But this movie is baffling to me because Superman has a very interesting subplot in here. There is a plot with Superman and this yellow kryptonite that they kind of take on Bizarro Superman, which all that stuff I thought was really good, but doesn't get explored much. Richard Pryor is one of, uh, if not the greatest comedians of all time, very raunchy style. But in this, it feels like Richard Pryor is very much miscast. He was only cast as a way to kind of get some notoriety around the brand. And at this time, Richard Donner was not doing these movies. So this very much feels like a studio exec who is friends with Richard Pryor got him. And I could handle Richard Pryor being in this movie. But the sad part is, none of the stuff he's doing is interesting. And like 70% of this movie is following Richard Pryor. And it just doesn't work. And like, here's the thing: I like these parts with Superman, uh, be having this evil alter ego, and like the whole scene where he's trying to swap between the two girls. I thought that was hilarious. But this is just missing something that I can't quite put my fingers on. Um, and I think it's universally agreed out of that older set of four movies, this is by far the worst of them. Um, and the plot of this too, I just want to touch on, is really not that great. So this was directed by Richard Lester, who did Superman 2, the recut, in a kind of move they did with Zack Snyder, where they replaced Richard Donner. And they do this thing where uh, I don't know if he was friends with Richard Pryor or not, but the plot revolves around a corrupted Superman, and he gets this kryptonite that makes two of him. And then there's stuff going on with Richard Pryor's character. Like, it's really weird. It's really weird, and it's kind of incoherent. And Richard Pryor's scenes directly take away from the movie itself. So you're sitting here and you're going, man, is this a Superman movie? Because I think a lot of Superman scenes there, like, there's a huge focus on Richard Pryor, but not much on Christopher Reeves. And the funny part is, the Christopher Reeve stuff is actually pretty fascinating, and I think more comical than the Richard Pryor stuff. So it's a real shame. It's a real shame. Did not like this. Very hard to get through. So yeah, I think a lot of people agree too. It's just not. It's not that good. Not that good at all. And right along with it, so at my number 8 spot, and this one really hurts me to say, and it's because I'm a huge fan of General Zod. We have Superman 2. This is not the Donner cut, and I'm going to talk about that separately, which I still would say is about on this level, because even the Donner cut doesn't have most of the stuff. Um, this was a good start, and they did a Zack Snyder here, where a good part of Donner's film was shot, and Lester came in and tampered with a lot of that. And so with Superman 2, there's a lot of good ideas here, and then there's this real big disconnect and some scenes that were reshot and rejiggered that they don't all come together. And the end of this movie is the end of the first movie, where he just reverses time and goes back to the way things were. And it's kind of like a rehash of Superman 1, which feels exactly what Justice League did. Now, the reason why I put this higher is because I have a huge bias towards General Zod, and Terrence Stamp, who does General Zod, is still phenomenal in this movie. He's my favorite General Zod. Michael Shannon being a close second, and then Krypton's one being last, which was still good, I think. But this is like one of those movies that should have been a home run, coming off of the success of Superman 1. Unfortunately, due to mismanagement and due to corporate interference, once again, this just doesn't have the same flair that the first movie has. It doesn't capture the magic for me. I am a fan of the first movie, you'll see later on this ranking, but for me, this just isn't it. It feels very off. The tone, the pacing, the final fight, the shameless advertising. Coca-Cola paid for that. It was just so crazy to see this literally just get really just put through the fucking ringer. Like, um, you have an interesting plot where Zod comes back. Superman gives up his powers for like a minute, and then he he gets he gets them back. You know, there's also the scene with, I believe this is the movie with the titty twister, um, defeat of Zod. It's just like, oh man, it just feels like such a waste to me. A very disappointing follow up to arguably a movie that revolutionized the Superman market. So for me, my my number my my number 8 is definitely that. It was just uh just blows my mind that this was the direction we chose to go. So yeah, Justice League at 10. We have the Quest for Peace at 9. I have Superman 3 at 8. And unfortunately, Superman 2, not the Donner cut, but the Lester cut, I am putting at 7. So let's go to my number 6. And my number 6 is going to be a movie that greatly conflicts me because there's a lot of aspects I like to it, and there's a lot of aspects that I just downright hate in this movie. And I don't use that. I don't use that. Very willy nilly. But I gotta say, uh, Batman versus Superman. So, oh boy, where to start? Now, Batman versus Superman, the dawn of justice. There's a lot of critiques that have floated around about this. And here's my thing that I think Dawn of Justice does well. I like the concept of turning Superman and the public perception against him. I like what they do with Batman. Like, look, a lot of people gave Ben Affleck Batman shit for killing people, but spoilers, Batman fucking kills people. I hate that stupid fucking argument. I'm the hugest Batman fan. Uh, I know he was more willing to, but this is supposed to be an older, more gruff Batman. I think Ben Affleck put a lot of work into his Batman. I think he's fucking ripped in this. And the fight scenes for this were just amazing. I really do like the warehouse scene. That's probably the highlight of this movie. And I do like aspects of Batman fighting Superman. Like, I love the training montage. I like the look of Batman's suit. All that stuff is good. I even like Alfred, played by Michael Ironside. Like, dude, like some of this is just like they make Batman almost a horror uh, figure in this movie, which I found to be awesome. Um, and I think that Superman has a hopeful tone here, like with that him saving people. You have your talks. I mean, these are all good things. Now, why I have this as my number 6, and this doesn't crack my top 5, is for one simple reason. The reason that I dislike this movie with a passion has got to be the worst portrayal of Lex Luthor, and that would be Jesse Eisenberg. Dude, his betrayal of Lex Luthor is so fucking terrible. Um, the whole thing where he's like almost this Mark Zuckerberg version of Lex. And I've gotten pushback like, oh, that's just a character, oh, in this comic book. No, it is a terrible betrayal. And he doesn't get his bald head until the end, and then it goes nowhere because the universe was done. I like this suit. I love the suit. I thought that was cool. Um, like, this has a lot of good stuff. But the other issue that I have with this is, and I'm not doing the ultimate cut here, but the ultimate cut has more. So there's a lot of storylines in here, like this whole thing with the war, and a couple of different things where like look at Jesse Eisenberg. Ugh, I hate his version of Lex. But it's just like there's a lot of things that don't link up. And when you watch the Ultimate Edition, it makes it better, but it's still such a big disconnect. And of course, nobody will forget the infamous Martha, why did you say that name? Why did you say that name? Like, oh my God, there's so much wrong with this. And I think it's terrible that Ben Affleck we didn't get a chance to see what his Batman would have actually been like, because I do think he nailed a lot of the aspects. And I think he gave a pretty solid performance. But unfortunately, the writing around this was just god awful. And it's another one of those movies where it's just like, man, this ain't it. And to be fair, it is a lot of Batman versus Superman, but it's getting away from like, this is your second Superman film, but it has Batman, it has Wonder Woman. There's a lot of shit going on here, so it just doesn't feel very coherent. It's all over the place, and it's close to getting to my top five, but unfortunately, it just doesn't make it there. There's something fundamentally missing with this movie. And that's a lot of the Snyderverse, which I think Snyderverse fans forget, is that those movies were highly divisive. So, unfortunately, my number six is going to be the uh, Batman v Superman, or Superman versus Batman Dawn of Justice, or Superman Dawn of Justice. You get the idea. So now we're getting into my top five. And my top five is going to be some pretty hot picks. I don't know what your guys' list, and leave a list below. Let me know. So for my top five, the ones, and this might surprise you, because this movie to me got a lot of unwarranted shit that I think it really didn't deserve. And I'm going to say it. I think this has some of the better portrayals of these characters, and that's going to be Superman Returns. Look, Superman Returns, when I saw this, this movie has very few action set pieces, but I think the concepts that they put into this movie were really interesting. I think the problem with this movie is it didn't do enough Superman action. It was a very character driven movie, and I think you can do that, but I think you also have to have Superman doing Superman shit. And I'm just gonna say this: one of my favorite portrayals of Lex Luthor is Kevin Spacey's performance. Kevin Spacey gives a very kind of mad, eccentric performance to this, and I think he really fits Lex super well. And there's a couple of shots in this movie that are just absolutely breathtaking. The one with the plane, uh, and the one where the dude shoots him and the bullet kind of straight off his eyes. Like Kevin Spacey's really good in this, and I think a lot of people didn't give this movie a shot. I don't know why. But I even did like the plot of reshaping the world and using the Fortress of Solitude to do it. Like, some of these shots are really good. Like, especially, I always love the shot of Superman hovering over the world and like swooping down. There's a lot of good things here, and it's sad because I think that just look, like the way he does the Lex Luthor there, I love that shit. I love how he brings that manic energy that I feel like a good Lex Luthor has. Um, I also just really like the idea of Superman being gone, having this child, and not knowing he has a kid, and the world changing around him. Like, I think this movie should be re-examined, because I really think that this is one of those movies that a lot of people talked about, and they were saying this about James Gunn's Superman. I'll get to that in a minute. Where I think that this movie should definitely hit, differently when we reevaluate it, a couple years later. It's one of those movies I feel like could stand a review from a lot of people. And I think it's a shame that it came out during an era with Spider-Man, Man by Sam Raimi. You had the X-Men and Bryan Singer, and you had X2. There were so many. The superhero genre was moving away from the sort of campy kind of superhero characters, and I think that Superman Returns got buried in that, and it's a shame because I think it really did a lot of good things that we would appreciate today. I think it had you done Superman Returns in this time period and just added maybe a couple more fights, a little bit more pizzazz, I think it'd be widely regarded as a great movie. I think even Kevin Spacey, take away the allegations we have on him, I think you would be like, wow, that was a pretty solid Superman. But back in that time, we were in a different era. That's really, I feel like that movie was a victim of its time. So my number four, even though highly controversial, I know Chris Knight will probably be rolling over about this one, but my number four Superman is going to be, of course, the newest Superman, Superman 2025. Like, look, I didn't think this was going to make my top four, but the honest to God truth, when I think about the other ones, the Richard Pryor one, I have very rarely watched again. The Quest for Peace, I've watched in my life twice. Okay. The Josh Whedon cut, I would never watch again. And Dawn of Justice is one of those where I really got to be into the mood. The thing about this movie, despite everything I've said about it, and despite what me and Chris have said about it, is it's thoroughly entertaining. Now, I have a full review and a live stream you guys can go and check out. So I'm gonna sum up my issues here. That him having his face planted, that's a perfect example. Superman feels like a co-star in his own movie. He feels like he is in the background. The dog feels like a comic relief contrivance. Um, I think David Cornswat and Rachel Brosnan do a great job. I love Mr. Terrific. I think they bring a lot of personality and a lot of character to this movie. I think that this whole thing with his personality fits Superman very well. I think James Gunn and then just calibrated too far of having like all of these different characters and all of these things going on simultaneously. And like I said, the story is a mess and the movie is cluttered. This movie has so much going on. And like I didn't have a problem as much as Chris did with the parents, but they really did overdo this southern accent thing. I think the Mr. Terrific scene once again highlight of the movie, but that's my issue. Mr. Terrific is the highlight. Like there's so many things that this movie could be, and for me I don't feel like it nails it enough for me to place it much higher. Now, arguably, some people will say Superman for the Quest for Peace is higher than this. Some people will say maybe Dawn of Justice, Batman v Superman, they liked more than this movie. I think that's crazy because I think for the problems that James Gunn's Superman has, when I sat down and I started doing this ranking, I was still at a place where the really bad to me bottom tier Superman movies, I just think realistically had way more problems. Production issues, studio interference, really bad. Like they were just troubled productions. But like the Quest for Peace could have even been higher than this. The third Superman could have been higher than this. But the problems that they had two, I feel like this movie shares because much like Superman 3, this movie focuses more on its side characters than Superman. I mean, it's like a facsimile of these different things, but when I'm doing this tier ranking, I still find it more enjoyable than the other ones. And I know Chris is probably gonna fucking flip his shit about that, but that's just how I feel. Like honestly, this is my ranked four. I still, as much as I am deeply disappointed, I still see the I still see the potential that the series has. And I didn't think it was going to get my number four. And as a matter of fact, Superman Returns was close to beating it out. But at the end of the day, I think that the action scenes really save the movie quite a bit. So at my number four is the new Superman 2025. And now we're at my top three. And I will be honest, this was definitely a crazy one to do because I know I might get flack for this. Because as much as I have talked about Zack Snyder's stuff being highly controversial. At the end of the day, yes, in my top three, I have seen this three times. I know PB is gonna fucking lose his shit here, but I gotta tell you, Zack Snyder, the Snyder cut of Justice League, while I've rewatched this movie probably three or four times strictly because of its length. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. It's just when you put the Justice League 2016 up to the Snyder cut, and let's be real, this was a newly shot movie. Like he did have some of the movie done, but I don't buy he had all of this. They gave him the money, and this is a big stinger because it does complete everything, but it feels like we should get more of the dark side route. But this movie is gorgeously shot. The action in this is stellar. Some of the scenes, like the one with Wonder Woman throwing the dude against the thing, the cyborg stuff was pretty decent. I like the Flash going into the Flashpoint and seeing the dystopian world where Darkseid has clearly made Superman his acolyte. Uh, this has a lot of just flash and flare and a pretty intriguing story from the stuff that we got. And I really loved some of the end jokes in this. Like there was a scene where Superman comes back and the Flash is running around him, and Flash can see that he's tracking his moves. We don't have that stupid scene where he's taking the Russian family and pushing a car. Oh, my God, like the Justice League was such a bad take on this. And so I know it's crazy, but really in my top 10, the number three in this list is going to be, without a shadow of a doubt, hands down, the Snyder cut of the Justice League, because I feel like this is what the team should have been like. Oh God, Jared Leto Joker. That's a fucking scary one. But this was the first time, and I would have to see if he wrote this, but this was the first time that Zack Snyder's writing and everything he had set up, if you watch Man of Steel, Dawn of Justice, and then his cut, it does flow a lot better. I've done a watch of these, and it flows really good. I love it, and I think that I would have loved to see a Justice League 2 to see what his dark side would have been like where we were going. But unfortunately, we'll never get that. So, yes, for all you Snyder fans out there, I do like this version of the Justice League quite a bit. And comparatively, I actually probably like this more because this is my number three than the James Gunn version of the universe, just because of all of the stuff it does wrong is stuff that I have on the bottom of my list. So this was really crazy when I was going through this tier list. I did not think that this was going to make it higher, but when I sat back and I thought about how many times I watched it and how much enjoyment I got at the end of the day, that's what this ranking is on how I enjoy it. So, crazy. I can't believe it, but man, I have to say the Snyder Cut Justice League was very entertaining. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think it was a very good time. But now, my top two, and this is the one that's either people are going to really love or really hate. But there's been so many controversies, especially with Man of Steel. People forget the controversy around this. Some people either really hate the movie or really love it. But in my top two, my number two for this list, the number two movie that I love when doing a Superman marathon is, of course, Man of Steel. Like, look, for all the flaws you can say, I really love this movie, and I just like to highlight that Christopher Nolan and Greg Berlanti wrote this, and Zack Snyder shot it. And you could definitely see there's a lot of themes and elements. I love Kevin Costner. First off, big fan of Yellowstone. Not the last season when they fucked him over, but the rest of Yellowstone was great. Kevin Costner is such a good Papa Kent. Like Jonathan Kent, like Kevin Costner gives those dad vibes, and I love the ending. And when I was talking about it with Chris Knight, I sat and rewatched it in a new context. I love that speech he gives where he's like, "Oh, you're saying I shouldn't have saved those kids on the bus," and he said, "No, maybe you would have been better off not saving them." Like this is the complex writing and shit that you could do with Superman, and the action in this movie. Uh, I don't care what anybody says. The action in this movie is like fucking top tier. The beginning scene with Russell Crowe as his father Jor-El, and that whole battle sequence is really good. I don't think you get to see a lot of emotional depth from Henry Cavill, but I do like the moments you get to see where he has this inner turmoil between what he wants to be and what he has to be. And there was a big controversy. And like, look, the channel is the Fandom Zone. I love General Zod. I have hated the neck snap thing, but I understand the purpose of it. I just hate it because I think Michael Shannon was a great General Zod. He's my number two. I just think his viciousness, especially at the ending, puts that believability factor of why he would have to take this guy down. Like, dude, like just the thing where he's yelling at Krypton and stuff like that. Like it's there's some really good scenes, and I think people have this funny thing of they really like it or they really hate it. I also like them showing the realism of like two gods in this universe fighting, and people said, "Oh, there's so much destruction, there's so much whatever," and it's like, yeah, you've got two superpowered beings fighting in cities. Like there's gonna be shit blown up. And I think this was a good setup to Batman v Superman. I think they dropped the ball by fucking hiring Jesse Eisenberg because otherwise I'd have that higher on my list because honestly, I like that it continues the themes and the stuff we explored in Man of Steel. I thought they really had something. But the sad truth is they do what they always do, and they like undercut half of the shit they this, and it's a real shame because like they basically had the blueprint. They could have at that time. I mean, and I remember if you guys forgot, Wonder Woman was a fucking hit. They could have did Man of Steel, had Dawn of Justice kind of fucked it up, came out with the Ultimate Cup, whatever, Wonder Woman, and then did it like Aquaman first, and then do your Justice League movie, but the Snyder cut that we wanted. And I think these because Aquaman made $1 billion, man. They had this template that they could have followed, but instead they did Dawn of Justice, and then Aquaman and Wonder Woman came out, and then you did fucking uh, the Justice League. There was no Flash movie, there was no Batman movie. It was really weird structure, and I think the structure is what destroyed that franchise. And I think the tones were all over the place. You had like Aquaman, which was this bright tone, contrasted with Zack Snyder's tone, and then Wonder Woman was kind of darker. And you had that the last act of it was not that great because it was a big CGI mess. So it was like there was lots of good potential there, and they wasted it. But my number one, and this shouldn't surprise you guys, and this might be different for everyone else's list, but for all of you guys who are fans, like for me, the number one movie, of course, is going to be the classic Superman. This is what I had my like basic. This was to me one of the first movies that I saw in a Superman series. I saw this along with Star Wars, the original Excalibur, if you guys remember that movie, on Laserdisc. This movie changed how I saw superheroes, and this was before I saw an X-Men or Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, and they changed the game again. But Richard Donner's classic Superman is one of those movies that I think it was the one that laid the template to what a superhero movie could be. The special effects and everything else so much ahead of its time. What they were trying to do. This movie was made in 1978, and there was one scene in particular, and I know people reference it a lot, but the scene of Superman flying in the air and seeing the sky as he flies around. Like, I don't know. And like, look, I was born in '84, so this movie is way before my time. But yet, I got exposed to this when I was younger. My folks, my dad and my stepdad, both encouraged me to watch a lot of older cinema. And for me, even with the advancements in Man of Steel and things like that, there's just something about the original Superman. There's something about General Zod that made him one of my favorite movie villains, full stop. If I was to do a top 10 list of my favorite villains of all times in cinema, right? Like my favorite cinematic villains, maybe we do superheroes just to narrow it. I would say General Zod was my number one. Terrence Stamp and his performance, and just kneel, Kal-El, kneel before Zod. Like, and the beginning when he's like, I will find your son and I will make him kneel. Like Marlon Brando as Jor-El. Like this cast and Richard Donner and of course the John Williams score. Dun, 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 dun. Like this is the quintessential Superman experience. It is a film that focuses solely on Superman and him trying to not only save people, there's like train explosions and all sorts of stuff, but him also battling this polar opposite and him being raised by humans where Zod is from Krypton and was militaristic and, sees this as his home to conquer. And while I think the complexities of Zod are better in Man of Steel, I just think there's a little bit of cheese, a little bit of campiness, but there's also some seriousness. And when Lewis dies and he loses her and spins around the world. And I know I hated it in the second one because it was kind of copy and paste, but in this one, is like holy shit, man! He rotated the whole entire Earth to the moment and to go back to save her to be in two places at once. Like I don't know, it's just something about this movie even now at my age still feels magical, man. Feels like we're missing something in Hollywood and it's just got that thing. They talk about movies that have it. This movie has it. I don't know what it is, but I fucking love and adore this movie so much. I love and adore this General Zod. Like this is my Zod. Like Michael Shannon was pretty fucking close, but he kind of came off cartoonish. Now, my only issue, because I've had issues with all of these movies, is Lex. Gene Hackman's a great actor, but really he's just got wacky land schemes. There's nothing really because he's overshadowed by this powerful entity in Zod and kind of trying to manipulate him. But I don't think Gene Hackman was the greatest Lex Luthor. And I know that's a hot take, but I just kind of never really cared about what he was doing. It was like Zod and Superman, baby, like these two titans clashing and the fucking ridiculous spinning, and then he threw the the silicone wrap shit on him. Unless that's too. Oh man, but like this to me, like was the moment my little brain went, and that got me into loving DC. Like Marvel, it was X-Men that got me to love Marvel and Captain America. And DC, it was General Zod, not so much Superman. I kind of always rooted for Zod, so maybe I was always a villain. But it was General Zod, and it was this whole thing of like Krypton, and like I was always like, Zod's not a villain because he just wanted to save the planet, and all these idiots, they were the one who destroyed it. Zod called it. Like I still always maintain he's the hero, but anyways, he was one of the villains that made me like villains, and then I got into Batman and his rogues gallery, which is so fucking awesome and complex. And we get into the Joker and things like that. But this was the movie that made me take interest in this franchise. So for me, the original Superman is my number one. So to backtrack, to give you guys my chronological order, at number 10, we have the Justice League. Don't like it. It was bad. So my number 10 is Justice League, the first cut. My number 9 is Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. My number 8 is Superman 3, with Richard Pryor. My number 7 is Superman 2. And then in my number 6, narrowly almost making it, is Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, just because it's not really, it's got a lot of issues. I don't particularly like it. I like particular moments. My number 5, or my top 5, is Superman Returns. I think it's underrated. I think that people definitely should take notice of it. And I hope one day we could re-examine this movie. Maybe I'll do a review if you guys want that. But Superman Returns is in my top 5. My number 4, surprisingly, is going to be the new Superman 2025. And I gotta be honest, I didn't think it was going to be in my number 4, but when I really looked at the list, it's weird. It just landed there. And it's really the enjoyment factor. I've seen it now twice, so I can't say a movie sucks and be like, well, I've seen it like 3 times. Like, it's enjoyable. It's good. I think there's room for improvement, and that's why it's so high. My number 3, which I never thought was going to be the case, but Zack Snyder's Justice League. On a rewatch for this video, I was very shocked at how much I actually thoroughly enjoyed it. Now, it's 4 hours, and that's my big negative. The biggest negative of the film is a 4-hour fucking movie. It's like half a day to watch that if you put it in your rotation. So I think it should have been scaled down quite a hair, considering we're never going to see a sequel to it, but it was entertaining. I like it. I think it makes a good trilogy of Man of Steel, Dawn of Justice, and Zack Snyder's Justice League. It's a decent trilogy. It's a watchable trilogy now. And then my number 2, Man of Steel. I know it's a hot take, but to me, Man of Steel is the closest you get to my number 1. Man of Steel is Superman fighting a villain, and it's Superman going through emotional arcs. It is a Superman movie. And the more I talked about it with Chris and the more I rewatched it, I realized that Man of Steel really is this high up for me. I really loved what Chris Nolan wrote this, and that's what Chris Nolan wrote it. And I didn't even know, too, because it showed at the end, he also was a producer. So Chris Nolan and Greg Berlanti really were kind of steering a direction that Zack Snyder very, very brilliantly shot. So like it or hate it, it's a great story. It's a good visual and it's got some great battles, really good epic battles, really good epic moments. And revisiting it now and watching that scene with Kevin Costner, I get now why, which was a big complaint. I get why he did what he did, and I get what the emotional impact was. And I just fucking love it. Like, it is really good. But of course, my number one is the original Superman. It is just one of those movies that this movie set what comic book movies would do later. It was campy yet grounded, kind of like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. It had some good emotional moments, kind of like X-Men. Like, the original Superman was doing a lot of stuff that other writers and directors were clearly inspired by. And if you watch their interviews, the original Superman inspired them. So I think my number one from now until the end of time will always be the first Superman. And it was a movie about Superman. And the Lex isn't the greatest, but the villain is one of my favorite villains of all time. It's my favorite villain, and it's my favorite version, full stop. Terrence Stamp is amazing as Zod. And it was one of those things that changed me as a child watching this. When I was like 10 or 11 watching this film for the first time, and just being like, whoa. And seeing over the years how comic book movies evolved, it was because of this movie. So that is my list. Thank you everybody for watching. If you like this video, click the like, share, subscribe, all the YouTube things, and tell me down in the comments below, what's your favorite Superman movie? Which ones do you like? Which ones do you don't like? I would really love to know. So anyways, thank you.